All right, we're live. Let me see the chat. Technology is such a pain. Okay. Bro, my camera is glitching. Oh my. What the heck? Okay. Ladies and gentlemen, bro, hold on. Everything in the background needs to go. That's gonna make a funny blooper one day when I make a blooper reel. All right. Golly, man, what a mess. Anyways, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, welcome to another installment of Jam Moore Interviews. I'm your host, Josh, aka Jam Moore, and thank you all for joining me on a wonderful Sunday afternoon, some morning for you guys. Wherever you are, thank you for joining me as always. Today, I have an extremely special guest with me today. Mr. Richard Neal is a professionally trained actor and producer, and you may know him well for his voice as Aerotech in Horizon Zero Dawn, Anton Oates in Life is Strange 2, BJ Blazkowicz in Quake Champions. But he's not only a great voice actor, a phenomenal on-camera actor as well. Most recently with his role as Mr. Millers in the new to-be-streamed movie, The Knights of Swing, and we're going to get into all that stuff today. Thank you all for joining me. So please help me give a rounding round of applause to the amazing, the kind, and understanding Richard Neal. Let's go. Yes.
What an introduction. Thank you, Josh.
Oh, absolutely, man. I had to give you the best intro because I had to keep rescheduling. But no, it's truly, thank you so much. This is an absolute honor to be speaking to you today. It's always a great day when another artist is willing to give me their time out of their busy schedule and just spend some time chatting with me. I always love speaking to actors and artists throughout the entertainment industry. I've been doing this for 3 years. So thank you for contributing to a long-lasting legacy. I hope to continue for years to come.
Absolutely.
Well, before we get into the meat of the interviews, I want to go with a little icebreaker. As I'm changing my content around, directing a lot of my attention to music. I love music so much, and there's a lot of music that has a lot of anniversaries this year, and the album I want to talk to you about. So the icebreaker is when I talk to you about this album, just tell me something that you remember from that year, or maybe you like the artist, or just an experience you have with that year, or maybe you remember hearing this song or anything like that. So first album I want to bring to your attention, Red Hot Chili Peppers' Californication album turns 24 years old this year. It released June 8th, 1999, and it has some of the band's most well-known smashing hits, such as Californication, the named title of the album. Are you a fan of Red Hot Chili Peppers? Did something cool happen in 1999 for you? Anything at all?
Well, 1999 was a big year. Of course, we had the all the hysteria over the millennium, 2000. And I was not married in 1999, and I was married in 2001. My wife and I, my soon-to-be wife and I, were actually in Joshua Tree out here outside of Palm Springs, 2 hours from LA. And we decided, if the apocalypse was going to happen, we'd be out there. And I remember that we were staying in a hotel and we were watching, as they do on New Year's Eve, the countdowns all over the world, Australia and whenever. And everyone was talking about all the computer malfunction possibility, what was going to happen. The software was not, were banks going to crash and all this stuff. And there was this weird, strange feeling of what is to come. And my wife and I remember we went for a wonderful hike in the desert, and music was one of the great connections between my wife and myself. And art and music, and we share this great love. And our daughter, we've taken her to the Hollywood Bowl a lot here, which is if any of your listeners ever come to LA, I think the Hollywood Bowl is one of the greatest venues, and one of the just a cultural event. If you have to treat yourself to the Hollywood Bowl, and we've made it in fact, we just have tickets for next Sunday. There's a jazz fest here Raphael Sadiq, and all these really interesting artists, different than old school jazz. I mean, what's up and coming, and we have an eclectic thing. We usually go to the reggae night here, which is amazing. We've seen Ziggy Marley a million times, and I'm dating myself, but back in college at UC Santa Barbara, I actually saw Bob Marley and the Wailers. So I'm really dating myself. So I saw
No.
Bob Marley.
Wow.
And to me, he was the most spectacular performer ever. I hate to, we're all used to sort of hyperbole and exaggerating an event, but I think when you saw Bob Marley, and he really felt like he was a spiritual, what you call a conduit to some sort of higher power. You really felt like he was a messenger. He was on stage, and it wasn't just a great musical performance by all the musicians, the I3s, and everybody. It really felt like he was he was a messenger for some, just spread the love and humanity,
Yeah.
and we could all get together and be all right kind of thing. And reggae, no one realizes how profound the influence of reggae was in our American culture back then. I remember getting that Bob Marley live, when I was in high school, and no one ever heard of that kind of music unless you were really into ska and all that stuff. You were from England, but to hear, people heard Eric Clapton's version of I Shot the Sheriff, but Bob Marley and the Wailers, they were revolutionary. And anyway, I digress because you asked about Red Hot Chili Peppers, and I've always been a fan of them, sure, of course, but I'm just telling you a little bit of my history. And I just think, and I revisit Bob Marley's music all the time, and it is a celebratory type of music that is so, and he did speak about, racism and slavery and the horrors of Black history in our country and around the world, and slavery and all those things, and he spoke about them, and all the social consciousness and poverty and the haves and have-nots, and he he really, really, spoke about it and walked the talk. He would famously was giving money to those less privileged in his home in Jamaica, and he was just a beautiful soul. And I remember it just being very different than just pop music, or it really was celebratory, and it brought people together. It brought people together. And it wasn't as commercial as what you think now. I know there are people out there with a mission, but it just really, really hit home how music can bring people together.
Absolutely. I think that's why I love music so much because of that. I feel like, or the arts in general, I just love the arts so much because of what it can not only do for people, but like how widespread you can make a message through the advent of films and through music. Or there's something so powerful about vocalists who can just vocalize what you were saying, that sort of like spiritual connection, like they have like a message to tell us. And there's so many musicians that I love that I can think about the top of my head who spread this message so in a way that I could never. I'll just put it like that, in a way that I could never.
No, it's true. It's true. I was listening to this interview recently with Smokey Robinson talking about
great
when Marvin Gaye had proposed doing What's Going On, and Barry Gordy and Motown were like, what is this? This is we don't want to be political here. We don't want to be political. And he says, you're going to put this out, or I'm not going to put anything out. This is the album I want to put out. And that album, oh my God, What's Going On? I mean, just how, you know,
Look, man, you gonna get me started because I love Marvin Gaye
Marvin
so
Gaye is,
much.
yeah. Oh my gosh, he's amazing. Just I can listen to him all the time, man. All the
Whenever I need
time.
a
I
just
love
need a
him.
nice little come down or relaxation, like I always throw on like Marvin Gaye or the Isley Brothers or Earth, Wind and Fire. Oh my god,
I
bro,
mean,
there's
yeah.
so many great musicians.
I
It's
mean, oh yeah,
so
Otis Redding. Otis
yeah.
Redding, man.
Come
Al
on.
Otis Redding was everything too, man. Talk about a guy that died too young. I mean, you think about people like Janis Joplin, they basically were Otis Redding. They were doing Otis Redding. And Otis Redding was the original. I mean, he was also a guy that was so connected. You watch his performance in Monterey Pop, and this really like 99% white audience, and he just rocked the house. He and Jimi Hendrix. That
Oh,
was an album I had back. They had an album that was one side Otis Redding's performance at Monterey Pop. The other side was Jimi Hendrix's performance at Monterey Pop. It was strange. But, I would just go to the record store and pick this up for Jimi Hendrix. But then I would flip it over and I like, who is this guy? Who is this guy? And that's a great thing about, exposing yourself. Is you get into this deep dive of who Otis Redding was and where he came from. And I mean, he's from where you live now. I think he's from Georgia in that area.
Originally I'm from New York. I'm from
Okay, I'm
Queens.
originally from New York too, man.
I know. We're gonna get into that. yes, represent. Come on. Ugh. Oh man. But yeah, just like I could gush over music with people for hours. I mean,
Me too. Me too. I can bore you. Both of us.
And definitely we're gonna get into it, of course. Like I said, we definitely got to talk about Nights of Swing. Great film right there. Can't wait to talk about that with you and
sure
pick your brain about that. But my first question to set this all off, after the icebreaker is, if you had 2 words to describe your childhood, what would it be and why? Like we said, you're originally from New York, so you have that whole energy coming from like the different boroughs and taking the subway. You got all that going on as a kid. So, how would you describe your childhood if you had 2 words to describe
it? 2 words. Do they have to be connected?
No.
I don't know. Discovery and panic, to be honest with you. I mean, I had we grew up initially. I grew up initially in the Bronx, and it was a little rough for me. I was getting into fights a lot, and there were gangs. I wasn't like in a gang, but it was just like I was getting into fights, and it was one of the reasons we moved out. And we moved to a suburb in Jersey, which was, it was about a half hour outside of New York. I would take a bus into the city a lot of times in the weekends and go to concerts, especially later in high school. Would go to concerts, and music was always a great escape for me. We went to a lot of theater, which was great. My parents were very good about that, taking us to theater, and of course, New York, and to see the beginnings of really interesting off-Broadway theater. I went to later on. I went to Neighborhood Playhouse in New York City, in Manhattan, and there was a lot of great theater, the beginnings of Sam Shepard and that kind of interesting family drama that sort of, it explored different aspects. I mean, New York, there's a love-hate relationship, it's like I'm a fan of Lou Reed, and he talks about that all the time. You have the great, all the great arts in New York. You have music, dance, theater.
You have the museums,
amazing. That all the museums. I would go to the Modern Museum all the time, and sit and look at the Monet's Water Lilies, or we were seeing a lot of it. My sister, 3 years older than me, turned me on to a lot of experimental film, like the German filmmakers like Wim Wenders and Fassbinder and those people, and Godard and Truffaut, French, and Kurosawa. So you would see these amazing retrospectives. I'd go to the Bleecker Street Cinema or the Carnegie Hall Cinema where they'd have full retrospectives of any director: Bergman, Truffaut, Kurosawa, Sajid Ray, whoever, and it was just such an education especially in my early 20s, when I would go to see these films and I didn't understand half of them, but some of them I did, and I just found it really amazing to see all this different type of cinema, and at the same time go to mainstream cinema or Broadway. And then you'd go to these clubs. I'd go to the CBGB's or Mud Club and see different music. It was just so much going on.
Yeah, that's why I definitely miss New York so much, because even though I spent a good chunk because I moved to Georgia in 2013, so I spent a good chunk of my preteens and young adulthood here, and I've just gotten to experience it. But it's I just remember how big New York was, and just how even you just describing all the museums and all the art and all the clubs going on and around. It's just I remember that. I couldn't take part. I was too young, but I just remember wanting to experience that so bad. And it's down here, I don't know. Atlanta isn't like New York. It really
nothing's
is.
Nothing's like New York.
Nothing is. And it's there's just so much going on in New York. And it's I don't know, your version, the New York you grew up in is completely different to my New York. I grew up in Queens, and it was just so, because I know New York used to be really violent back in the earlier days. I spoke to a music producer. His name is Michael Beinhorn, who worked with the Red Hot Chili Peppers and stuff like that. Great guy, and he would talk about and he'd be nervous to walk in certain boroughs because he knew how dangerous it could get back in the day,
Oh yeah.
And it's just with me, it wasn't that bad, but there's some seedy places, but I don't know, the way he was describing it, New York sounded insane. New York is still insane, but
before Times Square became like Disneyland. It was just stripped. I never went to those places, but it was a lot of seedy areas, even in middle of Manhattan. Times Square, it was very seedy. And there were funky areas. Now no one can afford to live in Manhattan anymore, but I remember being in the East. My sister used to live in the East Village, Tompkins Square Park on 7th Street near St. Mark's Place. But now everything is just, the first apartment I lived in when I was at Neighbor Playhouse in the 80s was this railroad flat on 35th, Hell's Kitchen area, 35th Street. And it was a 5-floor walk up, no elevator. So 5 floors, and I was living with a couple of roommates, and that's what you do when you're struggling as an artist in New York. But there's a great energy. Especially when you're younger. It's such a great place to be. As they say, the city that never sleeps, and there's always places to go, and there's clubs and coffee shops to hang out, and there's, especially when you're a young artist and your mind is just so open, and you're discovering so much all the time. I think that's the excitement, especially when you're young, that everything is just so new,
Absolutely. I definitely relate to that. There's so much I've yet to experience and I want to experience. I'm 21 right now. And
wow, you're a baby.
It's crazy. You know, little science. It's just like I remember starting this when I was 18. I started interviewing people when I was like 18 in my room, peak Corona quarantine. And it's just
Oh,
like I'm
wow.
still here, still here, still learning, still growing.
You're 21, man. My daughter's 22.
Oh God, that's wow.
And she just graduated from Emerson in Boston.
Let's go. Come on now. Come on. Yeah.
And she's just bought all this gear. She aims to be a cinematographer. She wants to be a DP. So
come on.
Yeah, that's her dream, and that's why she's back here in LA now. And she bought all this gear, all the new camera, and I'm doing whatever I can to get her on sets. Even being a PA or a camera PA or second AC. She even worked a little bit on the Nights of Swing
nice.
as a camera PA. So my name is not Martin Sheen, but I'm trying to do what I can for your kid. Oh, I wish I could be more of a nepo dad, whatever they discredit these people who follow on their parents. But you try to do whatever you can to advance your children's life and career.
Oh, absolutely. No, absolutely. It's such a beautiful thing that you're able to do that. You know what I'm saying? Like, imagine how many other parents, just who want to do that, but it's difficult right now who can't, and that's such a thing to be. It's a great privilege, and it's something to celebrate. That's incredible. That's so incredible for your daughter to be able to get that experience and follow her dreams in that way. And I wish I could, go on sets. Working on it. Me and my friends are always busy coming up with ideas and always cooking something up. But it's just, I don't know. That's such a beautiful thing.
The arts are always a struggle, man. The arts are always a struggle, and that's
especially now. Sorry to cut you off, but especially now we're seeing like the Writers Guild on strike.
Yeah.
We're seeing SAG-AFTRA talking about authorizing a strike. We're seeing the Directors Guild. We're seeing all of the greed of these companies bubbling to the surface, and artists are getting tired. We're getting tired of being treated like we're replaceable. People talking about this advancement of AI, which is a whole other conversation to have, just about how insane technology is getting. And it's like we're just moving. We're moving. And think about streaming, just Netflix has changed drastically how we consume. This is the industry is changing so fast. And not all for the better, unfortunately. We're seeing that these writers and actors are not getting paid for what they are owed. Residuals are harder to come by with streaming. That's what they're fighting for. It's so important, and I support every person who's out there on the picket line right now fighting for our futures. You know what I'm saying? They're not just the Writers Guild isn't just fighting for writers. They're fighting for all of us. When you look at what they're demanding, they're demanding better quality for all of us as artists and entertainers in this industry, because things are changing so fast. It's insane to see, and how content is treated. I'm seeing in the news Disney Plus is getting rid of content that they originally created for their platform and completely deleting it. There was never a physical release. You can't get it anywhere else. Once it's off Disney Plus, unless you pirate that, you're not watching it. And to just see how shows are so blatantly disregarded because they don't bring money. They don't have a million. Oh, they're not trending on Twitter. Bro, are you kidding me? This is heart. This is a person's heart and soul put into that project. It just makes me so mad to see the blatant disregard for so much content. I see great actors like you putting in the work. It's long hours on set, learning the script. What I'm saying? I'm an actor. I got to learn the script. I got to get ready, get in the character. And to just know that a company could be like, hey, you didn't make too much money. We're deleting your project altogether. Does that not sound? That sounds insane.
It is insane.
That's insane. And they're not making DVDs anymore. So how the hell are we supposed to watch any of this stuff? Pirating isn't easy. Go on pirating, you're going to come back with 500 viruses on your computer. You know what I'm saying? It's
I
a
know.
difficult thing to balance, and it's
I
just
know.
so,
I know.
ugh.
Well,
I'm
there
sorry to
has
go on
to
a rant, but it's
no,
just
no,
like,
no, no,
I'm just
no.
so
It is
passionate
very.
about it.
It's frustrating. It is frustrating, and that's why they're striking. You know, we have to. You know, I don't know. I mean, it's insane. I guess like the other industries, if you look at sports, how the players are protected. I mean, back in the old days, um, you know, players, it was sad. It was really sad. Like, you know, Mickey Mantle would be working outside of a Vegas casino, shaking hands just to pay his bills.
Mm.
I mean, now all these players, you know, getting these ridiculous multi-million-dollar contracts.
Bro.
I mean, it's insane. So, I mean, there has to be some,
Balance.
you know,
You
we can
know?
get into this whole thing about politics, but it is the extreme greed, like really, I mean, Jeff Bezos or whoever, it's like, you know, the CEOs of a Disney or something making hundreds of millions of dollars where actors are getting scale without, you know, or now it's like so much non-union work. It's ridiculous. And there's just a lot of artists there's just too many people who want to break in, so they're willing to work for free or peanuts, you know?
Work for
And
it.
there has to be some social support for those of us who are working and just trying to, you know, have a future and pay the bills and support our family.
Absolutely. And that's another thing. Definitely going to get into this because you're a voice actor and motion capture performer as well. And I'm working on releasing videos and talking about this a lot because now I have time to. But I've been so frustrated with how I've seen voice actors treated recently. Not recently. It's been this way for a few years. I'm friends with a ton of voice actors through the blessing of this interview series that I have. I'm so disappointed to see that voice actors aren't getting roles like they used to anymore. You know what I'm saying? It's Will Smith. Come see this movie with Will Smith, this animated movie with Will Smith and Eddie Murphy and John Cena and whoever the hell is the biggest actor on the planet right now. They're getting casted in these roles and they're getting paid millions, while voice actors are scrapping for even a single role in an animated series.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? They have to try hard.
Man. I mean, even the voice. I mean, I do a fair amount of you know, voice work for commercials, and it's. I mean, you know, whatever. I mean,
it's like if you don't have a million followers on Instagram or Twitter, it's like you don't matter. Like what the like? That's so backwards.
I mean, I've lost roles because they say, "Well, I looked at your Instagram account. You don't have you know, your million followers," and it's like we opted for somebody else who's got a following. It's like, really? That's their
your test of quality now. That's what that's.
Well, they're trying to save money for advertising. Oh, we can bring this person in who brings along their, you know, 100 million followers or whatever. So
and that boggles my mind because sometimes we're seeing in these instances where these companies are doing this where that's not the case. It doesn't work. You know what I'm saying? We're getting these bigger stars like a Chris Pratt or Sam Jackson, and these movies are flopping. Babylon, right? Babylon was a movie with Margot Robbie, Tobey Maguire, Brad Pitt. I think Leonardo DiCaprio was in it. It came out, I think it came out in 2021. Yeah. And it was jam-packed with all these celebrities. That movie bombed. It bombed. I don't understand why these companies think that just because you say Margot Robbie's in this movie or Chris Pratt is going to star as a talking badger that is going to make billions of dollars. You know what I'm saying? That's why it's very interesting to see the Super Mario movie where it's Chris Pratt as Mario. Still mad about that. Anna Taylor-Joy is Peach. You know, Jack Black is Bowser. And that movie made $1 billion. And my fear is companies are going to take that and be like, oh my God, so people came to see this because of Chris Pratt. And no, Mario is one of the biggest fictional characters on the planet. It's loved by millions. It's loved by so many people around the world. You can show your grandmother Mario and she'd be like, oh yeah, that's the guy, the plumber. She'll know. That's how recognizable this character is. It's not because Chris Pratt was there. It's because Mario was there, you know? And the companies keep taking this backwards. I don't know. It's frustrating. I could go on about it for hours because I literally do. That's my job because I just love voice actors so much. I love voice acting.
Yeah, it's funny. I'm watching anything with my wife, and I go, "Oh, there's Will Arnett doing that," or Brian Cox is doing McDonald's now, and Ewan McGregor does Expedia, and you hear like I have that thing. I know a voice like immediately. I'm like, oh. So you hear these voices. I mean, Will Arnett's been doing GMC for 25 years or something.
Jesus.
Jason Bateman now does Hyundai, but you hear this. Like, does everyone know that Ewan McGregor is doing Expedia? It's like, why do you need Ewan McGregor to do Expedia?
Yeah.
Why does Ewan McGregor need to do Expedia? But I guess it's so easy. It's like this fast money. And
it's fast money, and they're not held to the same standards as someone like me and you are held to. The requirements for our acting performances are much higher. You know what I'm saying? They want us to be top notch. When it comes to these celebrities, a celebrity could say a line once, and they're like, "Oh, perfect, take one, put it in the movie."
And then do they even know? Like it's like Brian Cox from Succession doing McDonald's.
It's like. It's insane.
Anyway,
it's insane.
It's funny. It's I don't know. It is bizarre. It's just it all is very bizarre. Like everybody does commercials now. It used to be like back in the day, back in the old days before my time, someone like George Reeves and Superman was typecast. He couldn't even get a role. Now you have Sam Jackson doing whatever. What is that? Does Chase or some Capital One credit card thing.
Yes, I've seen that. I know what you're talking about.
And you have you have all these good actors, whatever, Jeff Goldblum doing apartments.com, and you even have George Clooney still selling his tequila even though he sold the company for $1 billion, or Ryan Reynolds doing his Mint Mobile.
Yeah.
Do I need to see Ryan Reynolds selling for cellular company? And still he opens up in every big movie. It's like, does he need to have that? Does he need to hype? Nothing against Ryan Reynolds. I mean, he seems like a really nice guy, but why do we need Ryan Reynolds doing a cell phone company commercial? I don't know. It's sort of bizarre. It's very strange because there doesn't seem to be any problem. I mean, there was this terrible Adam Sandler film where Al Pacino plays himself. Remember that film? And he does a fake Dunkin' Donuts commercial.
Oh, yes.
Right? He does. It's not Al Pacino. Now it's Dunkachino. And you can look at it on YouTube. It's a very funny thing. So he's making fun of Al Pacino possibly doing a Dunkin' Donuts commercial, right? And it's like the funniest thing in the whole movie. It's very funny. And but then you turn on the Super Bowl and you see Ben Affleck and J-Lo doing a Dunkin' Donuts commercial. And so, okay, so what's the difference? Al Pacino obviously is not getting J-Lo and Ben Affleck money to do that parody. Right. It's a parody. But probably people don't even know the difference anymore. And, I'm part of the actor studio here in LA, and Al Pacino is kind of a god. He's a great, obviously one of the great actors of our time, and I shared that parody, that Dunkin' Donuts, with some people there, and they thought it was hysterical, and other people like showed it to Emilio, who was one of the directors and producers behind Nights of Swing, and he found it sad that somebody like Al Pacino, Mr. Great actor, Dog Day Afternoon, Serpico, Godfather, would do a Dunkin' Donuts, even if it was a parody. He thought it was sad for him, Italian American, to see his idol doing a possible Dunkin' Donuts. I go, dude, just laugh. It's funny, hysterical. He's very good in it. He commits to it completely. Al Pacino commits so like it's doing like Dog Day Afternoon. He commits 100%. And he's so funny in it.
Yeah.
You got to check it out.
I've seen that before. Yeah, I know what you're talking about.
I mean, it's funny, but it's part of it. I guess it's sort of heartbreaking that we've come to a place where there's no difference between true art and just whoring ourselves, whatever. You and I we would do a Dunkin' Donuts commercial because we need the money. I mean, does Ben Affleck need the money? And other people would say, well, he's selling his brand. It's putting his brand out there. People want to know it's Ben Affleck. So his Air Jordan movie can get more eyeballs if he's also doing a Dunkin' Donuts commercial during Super Bowl. I mean, really? Is that where we're at?
That is a whole nother conversation that we
whole nother podcast about actors whoring themselves.
Selling a brand. It's so interesting. I
mean, yeah. I mean, Bob Dylan, right? He sells, he was doing commercial for Apple. He did a commercial for Victoria's Secret. But then you have people like Tom Waits or Neil Young who refuse to, I mean, there are people who refuse to do that. Or even Paul McCartney, supposedly historically, there was a point, I digress, but Michael Jackson temporarily owned the majority of the rights to the Beatles.
The Beatles, yeah.
And Paul McCartney, supposedly it was a rift between his friendship with Michael Jackson, that Michael Jackson sold, I think, the song Revolution to sell sneakers. I think it was for Nike or one of those companies. And he said, Michael, why did you do that? I don't think the Beatles music should be used for selling products, merchandise. Oh, Paul, it's just business. It's just business. And he goes, no, it's not. That those songs meant something to us. And we really worked hard, and it loses their credibility as artists. Do you want to hear, what's going on about to sell, whatever, Exxon Petroleum? I don't think Marvin Gaye would like that.
No,
I think you have to be aware, of what you're doing. And it sort of discredits the great art out there a little bit,
Definitely. I couldn't agree more. Oh my goodness. But let's bring it back to you, because we can go on hours.
We're going on his political rant here.
No, I love it. Man. That's why I love doing these shows. There's two people having a genuine conversation about the state of things, But what does acting satisfy for you as an artist? You've grown up with so much art around, talk about the theater and going to these museums and just experience all of this great art. But what does acting specifically scratch for you?
Oh, well, it scratches so much. I mean, to me, it's about human connection and collaborating with people more than anything else. And I was just talking to my wife about trying to get back into doing live theater, because I think there's nothing more joyous than being on stage, and nothing more terrifying, which is wonderful as artists, to find things that scare you. You get out of your comfort zone, and to be in front of a live audience where nobody can yell cut. It's up you, and you're exploring. You're constantly exploring, and that's my training, Meisner, whatever. You try to be in the moment, and that's I guess that's crossing over into what we call our spiritual thing about being present, being in the moment with you, just talking now. We're not thinking about anything else. But that's true with, and the best acting is that you're really connected in the moment. And when life feels most magical and most mysterious and most exciting, and you feel most alive, when you're actually doing the work and really doing the work and feeling connected to another human being, connected to an experience, your body, your instrument, your voice, your heart, your mind, everything just feels so committed that you feel most alive. It's like something like you're hang gliding or something. You're out there and
that adrenaline, just experiencing it all, taking it all in. the theater is so cool because
and leaving yourself alone for discovery. You know, I think that's it. Well, you're not really sure, you know, and if you're really playing it moment to moment, that's what's so great about live theater, though. Even though you do a performance, you know, I've been fortunate to do some plays for a few months, and it never gets old. I mean, it's like, you know, I did Stanley Kowalski in Streetcar Named Desire for about a year on and off, traveling, and it was a very difficult role for me. It's not a person who I am, you know, this guy. It took me a while to get into that skin and really get emotionally understanding where he was coming from, the fears, the pain, the desire, the passions, the complicated feelings that you feel when you immerse yourself into a role. It's exciting, and it's dangerous, and it feels like you wish you felt like all the time. It feels like you're being in love. Like, you know, the ideal thing is like when you first fall in love with somebody and you're excited and you're terrified at the same time. Like you're afraid of losing that at the same time. It's just so delicious to be in that space of discovery and just joy. And that's what it's about. That's what you're trying for anyway. Of that exciting, that vibrant, that electricity that goes through your body, you know?
Absolutely.
I think most actors are just frustrated rock stars or something, musicians. You know, because I think that when you talk about you love music, and I heard you warming your instrument up before we started. I mean, you have a beautiful voice, and I think we're all there'd be nothing more exciting than. Unfortunately, I was not gifted with a singing voice. I wish I was. Believe me, I tried. I took lessons forever. But you know, I have a good voice for the stage, but not a singing voice. But I think nothing would be more exciting than being able to be singing on stage. I think this must be the most thrilling thing, and I think that's why certain directors, Peter Brook and Bergman and other directors, they drifted towards doing opera, because the ideal thing I think would be to direct and be an opera where you can actually incorporate singing, dancing, and acting all in your whole performance. To be able to sing when you hear someone, I mean, obviously Maria Callas or someone of that stature, when you hear that emotion, it makes you so. And like we were talking about Marvin Gaye, when you hear that connection, that emotional connection with the voice and the clarity, Aretha Franklin or any of these voices that come from another world.
Yes.
And it just sort of stops your heart. Yes. And you're sort of paralyzed just listening. You don't want to be anywhere else. You know? It's thrilling.
It's like you said, it's such a spiritual thing to experience, you know, just when, and that's such a beautiful thing about acting that I agree with you on, is just when I have to get into the roles for these characters and looking up the auditions and trying to get ready, you know, I'm reading the copy. It's just so interesting trying to get a fix on what the character is.
Yeah.
You know, I've played some very interesting characters. You know, I'm working with a bunch of my friends. You know, I played a nerd, scientist. I've played a sadistic, maniacal scientist. I've played villains, you know, but the coolest villain I've ever played, and you know, people know about this, but you know, my friend's making a Transformers fan project, and I got to take on the role of Megatron. And that role spoke so much to me because as I was discovering the character, I understood so much about where he was going. This character is tired. This character has been fighting for so long, and he's just tired and he just wants to get his goal done. He wants to achieve his goal, and he doesn't care how he's going to do it. You know what I'm saying? And that's where the villain element comes in, because, he doesn't care, but and it's just so interesting to understand that not caring got in Megatron's way. It corrupted his vision of getting things done. It clouded him. And that's just so delicious as an actor to just bite into that role. And like you said, just experience that discovery and just that joy of being like, yo, like, I get to play this character.
Yeah.
It's great.
Wonderful.
It's
Well,
great.
that's the thing about great roles. I mean, it just really taps into, someone said that, it's like our instruments are like a piano. You don't want to just play a few notes, right? You want to play the whole,
The whole
every
piece.
key
Yes.
that exists.
Yes.
You don't want to just play this one little area. You want to explore. And I think all of those aspects are in everybody, the dark sides, the greed, the avarice, the jealousies, the pain, the, envy, but also the graciousness and sympathy and compassion that we have. But we can experience all ranges of emotions. Really,
That's what makes us human. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, that's what makes us human. Also, that's the joy. It's all game playing. It's like being kids and playing games, playing pretend. That's essentially what we're doing as adults. We're just children never growing up and just constantly trying to play pretend.
Playing in that sandbox, getting our hands dirty a little bit.
Yeah, I'm the bad guy now. You're the good guy, and let's swap. Whatever it is. I want that territory of the sandbox, and you can't have it.
Absolutely, man. You've done such a great job just looking at your resume and to see how all the characters you've played over the years, and it's just so awesome. You have such a cool voice. Just talking to you right now is so cool. It's so fit for a ton of animated characters.
Oh,
you could go deeper to that register. And when I found out you're a voice actor, it's like he needs to be like that voice needs to be like in a character. And you've got to play so many characters. Oh no, I absolutely. And I don't lie. I'm very honest with my assessments of the arts and our actors I've spoken to. You just have such a cool voice, and I can hear your voice booming through a theater. You know what I'm saying? I can hear it. I just watched the new Transformers movie that came out, the Rise of the Beast film. And, there's this character that has like this deep, low register voice, and to hear it boom through the theater is like, it's just so cool to me. I just geek out. It's so cool. I love voice.
There's some people that have amazing voices, Everyone tries to have that James Earl Jones thing, or
oh my god,
the Darth Vader, right?
But
there's a lot of good voice actors out here, obviously, everywhere. It's fun. It's fun being in the booth. It's just fun, man. You don't have to, being a voice actor, as they say, you don't have to worry about the way you look. You just show up, and it's fun doing that, And lately, it's strange. I've been doing a lot of dubbing. You ever do any dubbing?
Yeah, for a lot of the anime stuff. Yeah, that's
But I've been dubbing for Amazon and Netflix, these projects that are, I guess, for people who don't want to read subtitles. There's a lot of, films from all over the world, and it's a whole nother world. It's just dubbing.
Dubbing is huge. I mean, especially in America, anime is so big in America now.
Yeah.
So big. I know you did a video game, an anime type video game deal. It's called Relayer. You remember doing that, right?
Sure. Yeah.
Anime is so big now, and a lot of that is opening a lot of the doors for a lot of voice actors now. Like I'm watching these animes, and I'm like, oh my god, who did that? And it's like a new person I've never heard before, and it's so cool. However, dubbing brings another slew of problems. You know what I'm saying? There's a whole issue going on there with low payment. Even though I love anime so much, when I learned that a lot of these dubbing voice actors that I love so much, they have to go to conventions every weekend just to pay bills. You know what I'm saying? Anime alone doesn't cover. And that's just such a sad thing to learn. And just so much anime is also non-union as well. And that brings a whole nother thing there too. And it's just so, I don't know. I wish, because I was thinking of this situation. I don't know if you heard of this situation, but there's an actor for this anime, and he wanted to renegotiate his price. He was like, can I get a bit of a pay raise here because I've been doing this for so long, And the company fired him immediately. Didn't have a meeting, nothing. They were like, oh, okay, we'll fire you. And it was a big thing for like a week, and then people just stopped talking about it. And it goes back to what we were talking about in the beginning. We needed a lot of people on board to make, because anime is so good. Anime is so cool. And like I said, it's opening so many opportunities for voice actors like me to get a shot.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? It's so awesome. But just that backdoor politics of anime is like, you know what I mean? It's like, I hate that. So many bigger voice actors that I've spoken to, like, I won't name names because, I'll keep it that way. But there's so many big time voice actors that I've spoken to who literally refuse to do anime because of the treatment of actors when it comes to payment and treatment. And like I said, when you're an anime voice actor, most of the times on the weekends, you're on a plane, have to go to these conventions, sign autographs, take pictures. It's a lot of work, it's a lot of backdoor work that has to go into, I don't know, do anime. But I love dubbing. I love anime, and it's so fun. It is difficult though. You have to match to the lip flaps.
Lip flaps, yeah.
Yeah, and the key.
Yeah.
It's a cool thing. But before we get to the voice acting with you, I do want to touch on your on camera. Now I want to get to the Knights of Swing with you. Just came out. Congratulations, by the way. Congrats on the release of the movie.
Thank you.
Great movie. Had a good time. I love 1940s music. I don't know if you ever heard of the video game series Fallout. It's a big, massive open world video game. We could just explore and pick up guns and kill music. I'm about to play that game when I get off. Oh my god. But there's this thing called the Pip-Boy. And on the Pip-Boy plays music from like the 1940s and 60s, and you hear Nat King Cole and the Temptations and all these great singers from back in the day. And that's how I got introduced to a lot of these great singers back then, because I was just listening to the Pip-Boy killing mutants coming my way, But I just love that era of music, and I love jazz, and I think you guys really captured that era.
Well, that was interesting. It was a long time to develop, and it was great. Emilio Palame brought me in. He and I did this film called Prodigy, which is still on. It's still on Apple TV, and as is Knights of Swing is on Apple.
Oh, cool!
Yeah,
nice.
So Prodigy was this low-budget sci-fi thriller, kind of like a Stephen King's Firestarter, about this young girl who had these super telekinetic powers, and the military was worried or whatever. And I play this psychologist brought in to try to save her and show her humanity. And I'm a sort of broken man psychologist, and Emilio played this sort of military bad guy. That's thumbnail sketch of it. Anyway, that's Prodigy. And then Emilio and he brought me into the Knights of Swing to play this teacher, this frustrated music person with kind of a frustrated artist music background, that's a science teacher and is a high school teacher post World War II. So the whole thing was trying to capture that period post World War II, 1947. Which has so many elements. And I was involved in because I worked with these young kids. We got a lot of young kids. We tried to get people that could play music, were familiar with, the horns, the sax, the trumpets, find real musicians who could act and actors who could play or fake playing. And so we had a good mix of that. And we had a long rehearsal process, and I had everybody watch this film called, what was it called? Oh, a couple of films, The Best Years of Our Lives, which was a great film. I think won Best Picture that year, 1947. It had to do with these different service members coming back and having that difficulty to readjust to civilian life after the trauma of being overseas, the Holocaust, which is not really mentioned, but you can go into a deep dive about all these directors George Stevens, William Wyler, John Huston, all these directors that went, Frank Capra, who did It's a Wonderful Life, who were part of doing documentary, sometimes propaganda films to get people to rally around our troops during World War II. And a lot of these directors, like George Stevens, who were there at the liberation of a concentration camp and saw the darkest side of human experience, literally, the smell of flesh, skeletal people barely alive, all of that stuff. George Stevens says, I can't come back to the States and make a movie like Swing Time with Fred Astaire. I can't do a light comedy anymore. He comes back and does Diary of Anne Frank. Frank Capra, the same thing. He comes back and does It's a Wonderful Life with Jimmy Stewart, who also, was this decorated serviceman who gave the performance of a lifetime in It's a Wonderful Life because he had that emotional depth after the World War II experience. So anyway, The Best Years of Our Lives sort of tells this story about people readjusting to civilian life. And it had a kind of vernacular and the slang of young people. And so we incorporated that because, people 1920, whatever, 2020 don't speak the same way as 1947. So and they don't behave the same way. So I wanted all these guys to watch this film just to see how people behave. There's a certain openness and at the same time, more of a guarded, less loose, but at the same time, emotionally more available in a way, less trying to be hip or something. There's a courtesy and a formality to people's behavior, but at the same time, emotionally kind of raw because of the experience. And so it's a different thing when you're trying to impersonate somebody that lived 60 years before or whatever, that people behave differently. And sometimes these films can document that. There's this film also called Ball of Fire with Gary Cooper and Barbara Stanwyck. And there's a great set piece in that film with Gene Krupa's orchestra. And I showed that to Amelia, who was arranging all the music. Roland Jacks wrote the lyrics and created this wonderful story. And the great thing about this set piece of Gene Krupa's orchestra, there's a backstory here with Roy Eldridge, African-American, great trumpeter. He was the first trumpeter, and Gene Krupa had this mixed race, whatever, orchestra. And they were worried about the film playing in the South because they didn't want to show, this is reality, 1947. So Roy Eldridge, you can watch this clip doing Drum Boogie. It's a great song, Drum Boogie. And with Barbara Stanwyck and Gary Cooper in there. And Roy Eldridge is having first trumpeter. And they had somehow with the shadows and the lighting, you're not even sure who's playing first trumpet. It's kind of sad. But Gene Krupa, to his credit, refused to not, have to make sure that Roy Eldridge was in the band. He was not going to turn his back on Roy Eldridge. Anyway, that's the part of the story of Knights of Swing, is that, the backstory is that there's this racism and we have this integrated band. And there's an aspect like, that refuses to accept, and Louis Armstrong was a big advocate of, he always had an integrated band, and it's a very sad part of American history that there was this struggle, and it still goes on today, sadly, that there's a problem with understanding, integration, and all this stuff, and that we're all just, and that's part of the story as well. Music brings everybody together, and there's no, the fact that Louis Armstrong, if you ever go back to New York in Queens, the Louis Armstrong house is now Louis Armstrong Museum. And it's beautiful. And people say that, and this guy who's the docent or guide, the tour guide for the Armstrong Museum, he said, I went there with my daughter and wife, and he says, not only do I believe that Louis Armstrong was the greatest musician in American history, I think he was the greatest person in American history. The kind of crap that he had to endure and the barriers that he broke down. I mean, obviously, you know, there was this stuff calling him Uncle Tom or something, you know, whatever. People who are in the beat world, Dizzy Gillespie or Miles Davis, were completely, they loved Louis Armstrong, and they realized the importance of Louis Armstrong. If it wasn't for Louis Armstrong, all these things would have happened. And he wasn't an Uncle Tom. He just had this joyous spirit. Talk about an open-hearted guy. You see his performances, and he just loved entertaining. And just because he wasn't sullen on stage, or he was an advocate for civil rights. He talked about when they were bringing that black girl into the school in Alabama. He said that Eisenhower should walk in with that girl, and he got a lot of flack for that. They tried to revoke his passport and badmouth him, saying he wasn't the ambassador anymore because he was critical of what was going on, race relations. Anyway, I digress. Louis Armstrong is a celebrated, amazing human being. You should. And there was a recent documentary about his struggle and talking about civil rights and the things that he did in breaking barriers. You know, he was in all those Bing Crosby films like High Society, and he had his dignity, man. He had his dignity, and he was just a beautiful. And he talk about a guy that influenced all these musicians, man. He just from everybody singing Bing Crosby, Billie Holiday, the phrasing, Sinatra, the phrasing of Louis Armstrong, and you know what he emphasizes. And you know, when I went to theater school, it's interesting. You know, they would talk about, you know, working on your instrument, your emotional instrument, your physical instrument, but they would also talk about handling the text. And that, you know, that's different. You know, you talk about you're an actor and you're trying to be emotionally open, vulnerable, in the moment, connected to another being, connected to the circumstances. But at the same time, then you have a script. How do I deal with a script? You know, these words. And they would say, listen to Sinatra. He's the phrasing man. Listen to what he emphasizes. And Sinatra supposedly would get in a booth before he'd sing a song, and he'd just speak the words and try to understand the meaning like a poem. What do you emphasize? Where is the emotional meaning behind this song? Who am I talking to? Why am I talking to that person? What am I trying to convey? And so the same thing has to happen with this text. You know, like you break it down, like what is important here? What is really, what am I saying? Why am I saying it? And there is a musicality to speaking the language of what is important. I mean, you do that. Like, what do you emphasize and why? Anyway, going back to the Nights of Swing, there's a lot of aspect to the Nights of Swing we tried to cover. And music was obviously an essential part of it. And Emilio did a bang up job with Roland. And they really worked hard to create that music. But at the same time, we wanted that social consciousness of the difficult times of PTSD, the race relations. We're all in this together, you know, like it doesn't matter what you look like on the outside. We're all the same on the inside. It doesn't matter. And, you know, and I have a scene. I actually didn't get credit for it, but there's one little scene in Nights of Swing where I'm over at Emilio's house. He plays the principal at the high school, you know, and he tells me that there's some blowback about the integrated band, right? About we have two people of color, two guys of color in the band. And I say, you know, after all the crap overseas and what the war was really all about, because when you think about World War II, what was the war really about? You know, about Hitler and this idea of the Aryan race. Wasn't our job over there is to basically fight racism against Jews, against blacks, about anybody? Wasn't that really what it was about? When you get down to it, it's about, no, it's not a white world. It's not a black world. It's not a brown world. It's just a world. We're all people, and we're not going to let this guy Hitler create this sort of, white race of people. I mean, people would argue about, whatever, Pearl Harbor and everything else, but it came down to, genocide. And sadly, as we know, a lot of these black soldiers came back and they faced the same crap that they were fighting for overseas. They came back. Lester Young, one of the greatest tenor saxophonists ever, and you're coming back from overseas fighting the Nazis, and you're still a second-rate citizen. You can't eat in certain restaurants. You can't vote. You don't have rights. And you just fought for this country? Oh, my God. Are you kidding me? No wonder Miles Davis was pissed off. Are you kidding me? No wonder Sidney Bechet went and became an expatriate and live in Paris. After you fight and you give up your lives, you come back. Anyway, I digress. But all that, we tried to throw a little bit of that into Nights of Swing,
Definitely. And you could feel it. And that was great. It's that time period in history is it's frustrating, especially as a black man myself, knowing all that went down and just learning more about it. It's crazy. And it's crazy how we still deal with a lot of that nonsense to this day.
I mean, just look at the people that are, I digress, but we know that the military, tries to bring people of less advantage, and the people who have money somehow skip serving the country, You have connections, and then we, just bodies building up, happened in Vietnam, just terrible. It's terrible.
It is terrible. And I'm glad that you guys touched upon that and wanted to integrate that into the film. It was it was very cool to see it play out, and this is a great movie, ton of fun.
Thank you, man.
You guys have not seen it, please check it out. It's just so much to break down and to dive into. Speaking of diving into it, what was maybe the more difficult parts of diving into Mr. Miller himself?
Just on a technical level, obviously I'm not a proficient musician, and I don't know how to conduct. So basically it starts with me filming Emilio, who was, Emilio Palame was the musical director and pianist accompanist to Peggy Lee for the last, I think, 15 years of her touring career. And so he arranged music for Peggy Lee, who's famous for, among other songs, Fever, Is That All There Is? And basically I filmed him conducting several songs that I had to be proficient in conducting. And I was watching his moves, his conducting, and I was watching, footage of Quincy Jones conducting and moves that we talked about, Bobby Darin, and try to create a swagger, try to make it Richard, but also being honest about being this guy who's conducting. So that was a technical thing. I had to learn how to talk musically and be a conductor. And but also the connection for me for the Mr. Miller was being a dad. That's who I am as a father. Very much involved in my daughter's life. So I thought these kids were like Miller is not a dad, but I thought these kids were like my children.
Children, yeah.
I wanted to guide them in a righteous way, be upright citizens, be honorable. We're not going to placate these racists on this one racist on the school board. We are not going to give up our dream to have a dream. I have a speech in there about, even if you're not going to be a Miles Davis or the next superstar, you can be involved in music. There's aspects of this industry, as we know. You can be a producer, you could be a teacher. There's nothing wrong with being a teacher.
Absolutely.
It's probably the most honorable profession there is, even though it's probably the most least valued in our society. It's probably the most honorable.
When we think about teachers, I'm sorry to cut you off, but when we just think about teachers, it's like they're so important because they are responsible for
everybody.
Yeah, just giving us our education and breaking it down so we understand it and we could be more productive members of society and understand and it just goes back to that discovering, the main theme, I guess, of this interview is discovery, just fuel our discovery and learning more and wanting to learn more. And we just see how teachers are just blatantly disregarded, told they can't teach things if they want to teach, told you can't teach critical race theory. You can't teach
we can't talk about Rosa Parks.
We can't talk about Rosa Parks. You can't talk about
Jackie Robinson. What are you, crazy?
Oh man, it makes me so frustrated to just think about, we've come so far as a society, but we have these people that want to go back to that time period that this movie set in. They want to go back to the 40s.
It's just racism, brother. It's just racism, man. That's what it is.
It is.
That's what it is. This sort of, I hate to say, they use these fake words, Christian, whatever, nationalism, which is just code for, want to wear white sheets and be part of the Ku Klux Klan and go back to a place of white.
If we're being honest,
that's all it is. All these people are just racist, and they, and that's, don't pretend it's something else because it isn't, man. It isn't. We know it is. And then you put code words, all this stuff. It's just, they're trying to ignore the reality. Critical race. I mean, it goes back to, the Native American, same thing. I mean, you're not going to talk about how we stole land.
Right.
Christopher Columbus discovered this country. There were people here. They had societies, whatever. You can read about Lewis and Clark. There's great books about,
there's so much education.
There's a lot of complicated history in America, and the best way to move forward is to learn our history and become better people. You don't ignore the history. We've broken treaties with these Native American people. We put them on reservations. This horrible healthcare in these ghettoized societies. We do the same thing to Black people. We do the same, it's over and over again. And the only way you're going to become better is by learning the history and not repeat your mistakes. It's like Germany doesn't teach about Hitler. Of course they do. They do. Of course you have to. You're not going to learn about the assassinations of Martin Luther King and Malcolm X. Of course. Why wouldn't you bring that up? Why wouldn't you bring that up?
Absolutely. It makes you want to pull your hair out.
Situation? Are you kidding me?
It's insane. It's just,
it's insanity. It totally is insanity.
Watching people like Ron DeSantis just, I don't know. Not to get too much in it.
No. It's just, it's dreadful. It's like, it really is like Nazi Germany when you think about it. We're not allowing the word gay. They're not people. Gay people don't exist. So we're going to say you can't say the word gay. And it's like Nazi Germany now, banning books. You cannot talk about Rosa Parks.
I'm hearing talk that because the laws are so vague with Ron DeSantis that there's potential of like HBCUs even getting disbanded. I don't know how true that is, but if that to have that,
I heard that
possible.
I heard in Houston they were going to stop school libraries. They were going to close school libraries in Houston. Like this guy Abbott is just as bad as DeSantis. I mean, what is that about?
Look, man.
I thought we were here to talk about voice acting.
No, we're about to get into that, man. But it's just, I don't know. Like I told you, it's just two people have an open and honest conversation. This film, Nights of Swing, tackles a lot of things that are very poignant and unfortunately are still very relevant to this
I
day.
know it's still relevant.
But like I said, that's why I think film is great. Like I said, y'all check it out. Richie gave a great performance, and before we get out of that, just again, congratulations on the release
Thanks,
of the
man.
film. Absolutely,
Appreciate it.
But like now, let's get into your voice acting career. How did you discover voice acting? Because a lot of your earlier stuff was a lot of on camera,
Yeah, I
theater.
mean,
So
it's true. I mean, still, I'm mostly, I don't know, it's probably half and half now. I mean, I
yeah,
do a lot of on camera. I've got a couple of films coming out. I just did this Max Dagan film. It's a film with Michael Madsen and Rob Morrow, and I did this other film, a horror film, with Judd Nelson's in it.
what did you get to meet him? Did you get to
Oh yeah,
like?
yeah. It's strange. It was this Anthony Ciferante, who did this Sharknado films. Really nice guy. Dante's Hotel, it's called. It's a horror film. Judd Nelson is a lead in it. It's a horror film, straight up horror film about zombies. People love that stuff. I don't know.
If there's
So
one
yeah, he was
person I gotta speak to, I gotta speak to Judd Nelson, man.
Judd
Such a
Nelson. He's a super nice guy.
Oh God,
Super nice guy.
so cool.
And Michael Madsen, in doing this Max Dagan, he was a super nice guy. He's been through a lot. Michael Madsen from Reservoir Dogs, and Rob Morrow, who was in Quiz Show and Northern Exposure. But anyway, talking about going back to your question about voice acting, it just I started. People would say to me, that's like typical thing. People say you should do some, it's like me and 1,000 other people, right? So I took a class, but it's true. There's so many actors, right?
Yeah.
And it's so hard to break into. You talk about doing on-camera work. I think even voice acting is even more competitive because, you can send your MP3 files from anywhere. You could be in Wichita. You could be in Auckland, New Zealand. You could be anywhere. You could send your files like, oh, brilliant. Let's use them. And, you could, So I took a class with this guy named David Gray, and he helped me get a demo. At first, you do a fake demo, right? You do fake copies. So you have a demo reel to send out. So you add all the elements, sound effects, and everything else to have these fake commercials. And then you replace them all eventually with real commercials and real voice acting. And but it's just getting an agent, like everything else. You get an agent. Through a friend, I was able to get an agent who sends you these auditions. As you know, they send you these auditions every day, and it's like throwing your hat in the ring. You just do the best you can, throw in these MP3 files, and you book a few. And then you even get callbacks. I mean, I remember when I did the Aratak in Horizon Zero Dawn, there were a couple of callbacks. It was such a huge process to book that role, dude. I mean, first of all, you send in the file, right? You're sending it remotely. You record it from home. You send it in. Next thing you know, your agent says, well, they want you for a callback, in-person callback to work with the director and the producers remotely. So you go to a studio. I had to go to Santa Monica. You're in the studio. And I had a wonderful champion in this Trina Jensen who ran the studio there. Terrific. And she was a real kind of cheerleading for me. And I was talking to the director who wanted me to deliver these speeches. And it was one of those things you're auditioning and you have this long speech about rallying the troops, or you're this Banuk warrior, and it's going up against the machines in Horizon Zero Dawn. We will triumph, And they hand me another speech, and they go, "Oh, take your time, go outside." So I'd be on the streets, on like not far from the promenade in Santa Monica, and just getting, memorizing and working out the beats, and then you go back up to the studio. Okay, I'm ready. Let's do this. You do it, and you're trying, like I said, going back to the phrasing, you're trying to build up momentum and have this quiet emotional moment and have this like big moment, and then you're trying to show your range, so you it's an audition. So what do you do at auditions? You just throw it all out. You just say, I could be quiet, I could be subtle, and I could be bigger. and I could be, and use your body, use your physicality, because motion capture, is all also about physicalizing. It's interesting because you're a live action cartoon in many ways. They talk about Avatar, but that's what it is. It's like a live action cartoon. You're doing all the physicality with your hands and body and your movement. And at the same time, you're trying to create a musicality with the voice. So there's all these elements, but you're showing how Richard Neal could do this, he could do that. He could be emotional. He could be angry. He could be sad. He could be whatever, regretful. And so you try to throw everything out there, say, oh, he's got range. And then they, and later on, because it was a good gig, man. It was like, I was working on this thing for a good solid month or two. You're in the sound studio at Sony. They have these sound stages, which are huge, like an airplane hangar. And because they have cameras all over the place filming you. And you have these, those motion capture suits with all these, they're like cameras all around you to basically, then the animators or the graphic designers will endow you with this body that's bigger than Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson. You can look like anything. So, and then you wear this helmet so they can put these horns on you and everything else. So, and I was talking to the director, I think, and he said, well, somebody wanted this other actor who had more credits and he's more well-known, but we liked your, whatever vulnerability or subtlety in this moment or something, whatever, who knows, it's like you audition for 1,000 things and why do you get cast, right? Oh, we liked him. We liked Josh because he had this, he has this face that reminded me of this other person, or he had this wonderful laugh, or, the other guy was not, he was too old or too thin or too whatever.
It's interesting, man. Like, definitely like voice act. Like that's just, oh man. I'm so glad he said that to you though.
No, I mean, you asked, like, why did I get the job? Like, why, and I just did this film called The Last Culprit. It was it's a murder mystery, kind of like an Agatha Christie thing. And it's now being post-production. But oh my God, I had to do an ordeal to get this film. I auditioned. I had a Zoom, then I had a callback. And then I had a second callback with the director, this Chinese American woman, Jennifer, and she's great, but it was an hour-long Zoom callback, an hour-long Zoom where I'm doing it with you right now, but she's going line by line. And then she would say to me, this is kind of a strange thing, but she would say, well, I'm not the only one making this decision, Richard. There are other producers and they have somebody else in mind that has maybe more credits than you, maybe a higher profile on IMDb or something. So they're thinking about him, but I really want you. I really want you. I go, well, great, Jennifer. I'm here. Let's do this. Tell me what you want. Tell me what you want. I'll deliver it. And so like an hour long, and I'm doing this thing. My wife's in the other room. She's overhearing this going, and of course, she's my wife's my big champion, but she's also like, it gets very kind of political about it. She goes, I can't believe you had to go through all that. I can't believe you. I go, honey, welcome to my world.
Literally.
You know how hard it is to get a job in this town? I can't believe she's going through this with you because she's hearing all the and I'm trying to give Jennifer exactly what she wants or what I think she wants, because you want the job.
Yeah.
You don't want all this for naught, right? All this work that we do, you and I, we audition, you do all this homework, you're preparing, you film it, you send in the file, hours of work, and you don't hear anything. It's frustrating, right?
Yes.
It's really frustrating. But so you do what you can to get the job, and you're trying to have an experience. You're trying not to have an attitude because nobody wants to work with somebody who has an attitude, right? So you try to be pleasant, even though I'm like over an hour in this callback already. And what do I have to do to get this bloody job? It's not like I'm taking over Star Wars or something. It's a small budget film. Like, what is going on here?
Yeah.
I mean,
They want you to be. They want you to be the next Sith Lord or something. It's like, nah, you just.
I mean, you work as hard to get the small gigs as you do for the bigger ones. It's so. Come on, man. Like, what do you have to do to get the job? You know. And sometimes it's, as they say, it's completely out of your hands. You do the best work you can, the best that Josh or Richard can deliver. You feel good about yourself, and then you have to forget about it and assume you're not going to get it because otherwise it's heartbreaking. But part of you is constantly like, okay, I should be hearing from them anytime now. I should be booking that job pretty soon because I think I nailed it. I hit it out of the park, man. I nailed that one. And then you don't hear anything. It's like, oh, man, I did all that work. And you just have to let it go. You let it go.
Let it go.
And you go move on to the next one. You get the next one. Because that's what we do in this just crazy profession, You got to stay positive, man. You got to stay positive.
You definitely do. I remember.
Anyway, what was your question? How to get into voice acting?
Yeah, and then you talked about Aerotech and just all that, and
and that's what you do. Because when you're doing the work, there's nothing better. And that's what keeps us going. When you get those jobs, it feels like you're in heaven, man. Showing up at that Sony soundstage with all these actors, working with Ashley Birch and all these other actors. And I was just like, this is heaven. This is great. This is the best.
How was it working with Ashley? Like getting to bounce off of that
fantastic,
energy.
Man. She was one of the creators of Life is Strange. She's a great writer. She's a all-around creative, man.
Wait, so did she bring you on from Horizon Zero Dawn?
No, not at all. It's just totally separate. She's had nothing to do with the casting. But she's a wonderful person and she's part of that world. She's a creator. I didn't grow up with video games really. And she did. She played games with her brother. She told me about it and she just loves video games. And she's a great writer. She's got great ideas and very grounded as a performer, man. She knows what to do and she can do different voices, as you know. She's one of those people who can do a lot of voices. Like certain people like Hank Azaria, on The Simpsons, certain actors can do, like they're like Mel Blanc or, obviously he's in another spectrum altogether. People who do 1,000 voices.
Yeah.
I'm lucky to do 6 or 7, dude. I'm happy to do 6 or 7 if I can. But some of these people can just do 1,000 voices. Like what?
Bro, when I research some of these voice actors and I find out that they voice this character and this character in the same show, and they sound completely different. I'm blown away. I'm blown away.
I know. I try to do. I mean, when I'm doing the dubbing, they always bring you in for a secondary. Well, let's see if with episode 6, there's this other character, there's this record producer. Let's see if we can do a different voice here, And so you try to, get a little higher, or you're more gravelly. You try to do something else. You try to mix it up, do a Southern accent, or do a more New York accent, or do a Russian thing, East European or something.
Gotta mix up. You gotta have fun.
You gotta have fun. It's all about having fun anyway, man.
Oh yes.
And it's about relaxation, as we know. And they tell you that everything. And there's nothing when you're relaxed and having fun, because that's part of it all. As instruments, as actors, you got to be relaxed and you got to know your instrument and have fun, man. It's about playing. And that's what it always is. Like before the camera, Brando supposedly said, there's no, when someone says action, there shouldn't be like a need to do anything. Like there's nothing before action or after action. It's the same person. So it's not a call to do something differently. You should be relaxed and enjoy the moment to moment reality. I mean, I try to get myself, because when you're film acting, and you're doing take after take after take, right? And you got to make it fresh for yourself. I try to put myself in like I'm coming from somewhere else. Like I don't even know I'm on a set. I don't know where I am. I don't know anything. I don't know what I'm about to say. I don't know what you should. Michael Shannon said it. Michael Shannon, I went to a screening, was talking about how you do all the homework, right? You kind of know your character. the circumstances, why I'm here, what do I want to do, you know, my agenda, whatever it is. You have the stakes. You have certain stakes. But at the same time, once the camera starts rolling, you forget everything and just be in the moment and listen and react. Just look at the person in the eyes, listen to them, and be in the moment. You know? Because you don't know what the person's going to do. And the camera is a microscope, man. It picks up the least bit of acting or artifice. When it knows when you're faking or when you're acting. You don't want to act, you know? You want to be in the moment and be real, and be genuine, and have a genuine experience, man. The happy accident. You want the happy accident if it's possible.
Absolutely.
Like when an actor throws something at you, you didn't know that was going to happen, and it takes you by surprise, and you love that surprise.
I don't know if you've seen the Spider-Man movie was called Spider-Man No Way Home, and it brought all the Spider-Man people. It was Tom Holland. Yeah. Oh man, I thought it's a fun film. Fun
I'll check it out
if you ever get a chance. But there
all the Spider-Mans are in there.
Yeah, Tobey Maguire, Andrew Garfield, and the most recent Tom Holland. And there was a scene where they're about to go fight the villains, and Andrew Garfield's like, "Wait, guys, I love you." And then Toby and Tom look confused and they say, "Thank you." Come to find out, Andrew Garfield improvised that line, and that reaction were like they were confused is because it wasn't in the script. He improvised that whole scene, and I just think that's so cool. You know, improv is so fun. So fun.
It is. It's true, man.
So fun, but
it's true. Well, everything should be having that vibe. You know, I think even though you're not improvising, you know, I mean, when you're on a script, obviously, they want you to say the dialogue, but in the moment, it should have that feeling. It should be a feeling of like, you don't know what's going to happen. Right. You know what's going to happen, man. So I think that you have to create that for yourself as an actor, whatever you can do. It's kind of like, I don't know. It's like being more stupid or something. It's like you're really trying to eliminate the knowledge that you already have. Like you've done all the homework, you know everything, you know all the dialogue, it's in your body, you don't have to think about it. But you're trying to be like, because to be believable in front of the camera, you know, you're supposed to be a person that has never seen this person, never been here before, never had this circumstance, and you're trying to act in a genuine, real way. And so you try to forget all that and just suddenly be somewhat stupid. I don't, it's not probably the most poetic way of saying it, but you're trying to be less aware and less cognizant of everything that you've done to get to that place. You know, as a person, I think you're just trying to, you know, see what's going on. Check it out.
And I want to get to the fun part of my interviews called Weird and Wacky. It's where you have 1 minute to answer a series of weird and random questions.
Okay.
The current number that people got to the most is 15 questions in 1 minute. Wow. Do you think you could beat them?
Okay, it sounds dangerous. I'm scared.
Don't be. All right, I'm about to start the timer in 3.
Okay.
2, 1. Longest time period without taking a shower?
2 days.
Least favorite food?
Beets.
What food could you eat without getting bored of it?
Pizza.
Actor you would like to work with one day?
Oh, God. Meryl Streep.
Favorite ice cream flavor?
Chocolate.
A song that resonates with you so personally?
Let's Get It On.
An album that you could listen to without skips?
Gosh, man, oh man. Let's Get It On.
Last show you watched?
Succession.
Least favorite show?
Oh, God. God, oh my God, it's a hard
14, 12, 11.
So, least favorite show.
9.
Dude, I'm
8,
sorry. I can't
6,
think of it.
5.
I avoid least favorite shows.
Oh, last movie you watched? Time.
Oh, last movie I watched. It was a documentary, probably. I watch a lot of documentaries. Oh, by Sidney Lumet. It's this
Isn't your brother a documentary
No, my
person?
sister.
Sister. There you go. Okay.
Yeah, she did a film about Quincy Jones called Listen Up, The Lives of Quincy Jones, where she actually, this is back in the 80s, she interviewed Michael Jackson, Miles Davis, Ray Charles.
You're blowing my mind right now. You have to stop.
What? Interviewed all these people.
Wow.
Dizzy Gillespie.
Bro.
I mean, but Ray Charles and Sinatra was in it. Sinatra.
Your sister got to. I hate you. I love Frank Sinatra.
No, but he interviewed him. Check it out. Called "Listen Up: The Lives of Quincy Jones," and and through her contacts, I got to see Sinatra in concert. Carnegie Hall was one of his last concerts.
No.
Yeah.
What? That is so. I love Frank Sinatra so much. I'm not gonna lie. Like I'll just catch myself like just singing along. You know, what song was I singing last? I was singing Frank Sinatra song. What was it?
I got the world on a string.
God, there's so many good ones. But I was singing "Fly Me to the Moon." Let me play.
No, we had that at my wedding. We handed out. My wife and I had a small, intimate wedding, and we handed out lyric sheets to 2 songs. We did that song and what's it called? Here, There, and Everywhere. The Beatles song, McCartney, Lennon. So the "Fly Me to the Moon" is yeah. In other words, please be true. In other words,
yes,
I
love you. Yes. Let's go.
My heart with. Let me say
forevermore.
You are all I long for,
all I worship and adore. Yo!
Oh, no, what a great song! What a great song!
So good.
Oh my gosh.
Man, Richard, I've absolutely enjoyed my time with you so much, man.
Likewise,
I'm just having fun and chatting. But my last question to you is, before we close this all off, I'd love to ask all of my guests this question. But, you know, if people were paying attention, no, I'm kidding. But, you know, there's so much going on around the world today. Obviously, we have so much things going on politically, socially, environmentally. There's just so much going on around the world. If you were given a mic and all the 8 billion people around the world could hear you, what would be your current message to everyone in these difficult times we find ourselves in?
Let's just love each other. Let's look in each other's eyes and see that we're all brothers and sisters. Absolutely. You know, we're all brothers and sisters here. You know, and let's make the world a better place, and let's look out for one another. Let's take care of each other. Let's take care of each other. Don't be a bystander, be an upstander.
Ooh, I like that. Well, Richard, thank you so much for joining me.
Thank you.
Again, congratulations on all your success.
You too,
congratulations
man. You're a baby. You're 21. You got the whole world. You got the world on a string, baby. Just embrace it. Do everything you can. Follow your dream. Pursue your dream. Don't let anybody tell you can't. Just have that passion and the love, because obviously I feel the love that you have for this art, and you can do it. You can do it. You got a great voice. You got a great instrument. You got a great spirit. You can do it all, man. And I want you to hire me when you make it. All right.
Hey, listen, everyone who's been interviewed by me, we all doing something.
Well, let's do something. Let's collaborate. Why not?
Absolutely.
It's all about contacts and connections, man. People want to work with people they want to work with, you know? Absolutely. People want to work with people who are fun and have fun and share that joy and that excitement.
Yes.
You know?
Absolutely.
You've got it, man. Never lose it. Never lose it.
Absolutely. Everyone, please be sure to follow Mr. Neil on his socials. I've left his Instagram and his Twitter down below. Don't forget to follow me as well. Thank you all so much for joining me on another installment of Jant More Interviews, and I will see y'all on my next interview. Richard, have a phenomenal day, and
You
I'll
too,
keep in
Josh.
touch. Absolutely.
See you around.
See ya.